bringing you key insights, tips, and advice from the brightest minds in the Canadian franchise industry. This is the Franchise Canada Chats podcast. Welcome to the Franchise Canada Chats podcast, where we take you into the world of franchising. Our interviews are with franchisees, franchisors, and industry leaders who give on-the-pulse expert advice and share their franchising insights and experiences. I'm your host, Stephanie. This is Season 3, Episode 9. In this episode, we feature Catherine Monson, CEO and President of FASTSIGNS International. She explores how franchises across the country have been put to the test throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Here, Catherine shares how to confront crisis as an opportunity for change, to refocus, and to capitalize on what's coming in the future. She explores franchising best practices and explains how being an inspirational and effective leader involves learning how to develop a positive mental attitude with your team using goal-directed behavior. This episode was adapted from Catherine's keynote presentation titled Leading Through Challenging Times, as part of the Canadian Franchise Association's Business Recovery Summit series. The month-long series of webinar presentations took place throughout October. You can learn more at cfa.ca. Enjoy the episode.
And I am so excited to be here today with everybody at the Canadian Franchise Association and tell you a little bit about what I believe about leading in challenging times. And it really starts with just some core beliefs that I have about success itself. And that really starts out with my belief that the truly successful people, the most successful people, do the things that the less successful people are unwilling to do. And part of that comes down to drive, part of that comes down to discipline, and part of that comes down to training and education. So I have to start with my core belief. My core belief is that there are 5 common characteristics of all highly successful people. And then because I'm in the sign business, I kind of made a street sign out of it. But those are positive mental attitude, goal-directed behavior, self-motivation, a sense of urgency, and never stopping learning. And here's what I truly believe in every cell of my being. All of these are learned skills. Some of it might be DNA. There might be some people that have a genetic predisposition to having a sunnier or more positive attitude than others. But the reality is, we can train our minds to have a positive outlook, a positive mental attitude. We can develop our skills of goal-directed behavior. We can develop our skill, our drive of self-motivation and a sense of urgency. And each and every one of us can be a lifelong learner and focus on developing our skills in all areas, leadership, our particular industry, franchising, etc. One of my favorite things to do is to speak with young people. Whenever I have the opportunity to give a presentation or a speech to high school kids or college kids, my favorite thing to talk about is these 5 common characteristics of all highly successful people. And the most important part is they are all learned skills. So when I look at my career, I knew at a young age that I wanted to be a CEO. At the time, I didn't know what a CEO was, but I knew I wanted to lead a big company. And so what I focused on is what would I have to learn and become to be able to have that position? And then as I worked in my 20s and my 30s, and I had several mentors, and I read a lot of books on successful people, I came to understand these 5 common characteristics and that they are all learned skills. Depending on some books you read, there might be 10 common characteristics. But as I've looked through everything and talked to mentors and read a lot of books, I come up with these 5 common characteristics. So I want to talk a little bit about each of those 5 and how we would develop those skills in ourselves. And then I'll get more focused on leading in challenging times. But you kind of have to have the baseline. You have to have the foundation first. So it really starts with my belief that no one will ever be more successful than they see themselves being. I had the opportunity one time to visit for a couple hours with a very successful multi-unit franchisee here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. His name is Aslam Khan. Aslam emigrated from Afghanistan with under $200 in his pocket He got a job as a dishwasher at a chicken franchise restaurant, and one day was able to be the GM, and then had the opportunity to buy that one, and now has over 300 franchise locations. What Aslam will tell you he does every morning is he thinks about his day. Now, he actually does this laying down on the floor. I can do it sitting in a chair, but he envisions every success of the day before the day starts. This is about seeing yourself being more successful in your mind. If you're going to have an important presentation, you visualize success about that presentation ahead of time. So part of what we need to learn to do and teach our kids to do is to envision themselves being more successful. I'm also a big believer that attitude determines altitude. Nobody wants to follow a grumpy CEO. If I was always talking about how bad business is, it'd be very hard for me to motivate my team. So my attitude is going to determine my altitude as a CEO. And I also really believe that attitudes are truly contagious. And so every day I ask myself, is my attitude in a place that it is worth catching? There is no question that morning is not my time. I've never met a morning I like. It takes me a while to get caffeinated and to get awake. Sometimes I wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and I have to get myself in the right mindset before my day starts, whether I'm working in the office like I am today, or whether I'm working virtually from home. I've got to make sure that my attitude is one that is worth catching by every one of my team members and every single one of my franchisees. One of my very favorite quotes is, a diamond is a piece of coal that took stress really, really, really well. We have here in our office at FASTSIGNS International a very long hallway. It is called Inspiration Hall. Inspiration Hall is filled with over 150 quotes about positive mental attitude, goal-directed behavior, never stopping learning, perseverance, grit, courage, all of those kinds of things. I've been a collector of quotes all of my adult life. What I do to get my head and my heart where I need to be a good leader is I make sure that I have filled my mind with the right thoughts. There is no question that during this pandemic, there have been very tough days, very scary days, very intimidating days. But I have realized that as a leader, I need to get in a positive mindset before I do anything. And so when I think about those most stressful days, I want to be a diamond. I don't want to just be a piece of coal. I want to shine and do things very, very well. I also believe that a negative mind will never get you a positive life. And so I'm going to tell you a personal story. I grew up in an abusive alcoholic home. I could have every excuse to be a victim and to blame others. I made a choice that I was not going to be a victim and that I was going to create my own life. I absolutely faced depression in my early and mid 20s. I saw therapists. I think seeing a professional is a really great thing. One of the things that one of my therapists taught me is to control my mind. What I used to do to get in a negative place is I would start thinking about something, whatever it is. I'm 15 pounds overweight. I don't have a man in my life. Money's tight, whatever it is. And then I would start to think about more and more negative things that would actually spiral down. And what my therapist taught me is I'm in control of my mind. So the first thing is to stop thinking negative. And to this day, if I catch myself thinking negative, I will actually say to myself, stop. I will actually yell at myself. And you ought to try doing that sometime, like standing in a line in a grocery store. People really wonder about you. But the first thing is I've got to control my mind. I'm going to share with you later in this presentation a URL where we have posted probably about 40 different videos about how to create a positive mental attitude, how to never stop learning, how to create goal-directed behavior. And you can watch any of those videos that I've created for free. So that'll be coming towards the end. But what I've learned is I've got to control my mind. Number one, I got to stop thinking negative, and I got to put positive things in my mind. Zig Ziglar, a great motivational speaker, sales trainer, and inspiring human, said, people often say motivation doesn't last. Well, either does bathing, which is why we recommend both every day. So the most foundational thing I believe about leading through challenging times, or being an inspirational leader, or being an effective leader, is learning how to develop a positive mental attitude. If you want to be an impactful parent, an impactful grandparent, aunt or uncle, it's teaching young people how to develop a positive mental attitude. Once you've got that, you can really tackle the world. And then goal-directed behavior. There's so much research, as I'm sure you all know, that the people who write goals down, look at them regularly, achieve a lot more than other people. And all high achievers plan their work and work their plan. And people with goals succeed because they know where they're going. They know where they want to end up. In the area of self-motivation, I had the opportunity once to visit with and get to know Jenny Craig, who back at this point, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, created a chain of very successful weight loss centers. And one of the things she said about self-motivation is it's not what you do once in a while, but what you do day in and day out that makes a difference. When I start my day, I do a gratitude journal. The first thing I do when I get up is I write a couple things in a gratitude journal. I am orienting my mind to think about all of the good things in my life, right? Before I go to bed, I do the very same thing. I'm focused on making sure that I have a positive outlook, because it is the best way for me to succeed as a leader. Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of the United States, said, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more of it I have." And that's that self-motivation. It's not doing 100% more than your competition. It's doing 2 or 3 or 4% more just to be a little bit better, a little bit harder work. And one of my favorites is, you can't have a $1 million dream on a minimum wage work ethic. Then in the area of sense of urgency, what we find is highly successful people are the ones that are getting things done. In fact, my dad used to say, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, because those people who are busy, they just know how to get things done. They keep driving forward. So one of the quotes in Inspiration Hall here is, never put off until tomorrow what you can do today. Unless maybe you're on vacation, then you can do it while you're on vacation. But it's that sense of urgency, that's that driving forward. It's making progress each and every day. The founder of FASTSIGNS had a quote that is also in Inspiration Hall here that says, "The universe rewards action." I believe that very, very much. I think it's most important in times of fear to focus on what you can control and take some action in those areas of what you can control. And then in the area of never stopping learning, I really believe that we should become students of success, and we ought to study successful people. We ought to have successful mentors that we talk to when we have a challenge. We ought to be reading books about successful people. We ought to be learning about successful sporting teams and organizations, and then practice what we have learned from those studies in our own lives. And I'm a huge believer that leaders are readers, that for us to continue to be better, better, and better in our leadership skills, we've got to keep learning about leadership. And so high performance comes from constant improvement. So as I think about these 5 common characteristics, I have literally for decades, and I'm old, so I can say decades because I've been in franchising this year 40 years. I shouldn't really say that. All the money I spend on anti-aging products, it's really stupid to actually give that away that way. But I believe these are learned skills, and I work every day to make sure I'm getting better at a positive mental attitude, even in the midst of a pandemic, making sure that I'm getting better at goal-directed behavior. I've got my business goals for FASTSIGNS International and now as well for Nerds to Go, but I also have personal goals about fitness, about health, about quality of life, about things that I want to accomplish. If you go to my home, you will see my goals taped up on my bathroom mirror. So every morning when I'm getting ready, I'm looking at them. And every evening as I'm getting ready for bed, I'm looking for that as well. But it's about learning to get better at each of these skills: positive mental attitude, goal-directed behavior, self-motivation, a sense of urgency, and never stopping learning. So in my mind, that's foundational. We can all get better in each of those 5 things, which will lead us to be more successful in whatever our endeavor is. We would be more successful as parents, more successful as school teachers, more successful as a pastor, more successful as a manager, more successful as a franchisee, as we work to get better in each of these 5 areas. So I shared that with you first, so you understand where I'm coming from, and that I truly believe that each of us can focus and get better on each of those areas. So now I want to transition a little bit to, well, that's great, Catherine, but what the heck do you do in a pandemic or a deep recession or some really other shaking, challenging time? And so I'm going to focus a little bit on that. I will tell you that the pandemic has been a very trying time. It has been very scary. But I made a decision early on, the second week of March, that we were going to lead our franchisees. We were going to do a lot of things to make sure that they got through this pandemic in the best possible shape. And I started with a theme. And this quote from Zig Ziglar has been the theme on how we run our business, how we interact with our franchisees, about everything we do. In the beginning, we started March 16th with weekly Connect with Catherine conference calls, which is just our term for a network-wide video conference call where I am delivering content and then opening it up for questions and answering any question anybody has. So we started doing that weekly, and I'll talk in a little bit about the importance of communication. But at the beginning and the end of every Connect with Catherine, at the beginning and the end of every company meeting, at the beginning and the end of any meeting that I'm having during this pandemic, I reflect on this quote and talk about this quote. Expect the best. That's that positive outlook. Prepare for the worst. We got a lot of things we got to do to be prepared. Cash is king. We got to make sure we're managing our expenses and managing our cash, right? And then capitalize on what comes. I think that is foundational. Your theme could be different than this theme, but this is what we are going to use every time we're talking to franchisees individually or as a group or talking to the team to get our minds focused on how to get through this crazy, crazy time. So one of franchising best practices, one of the best practices in franchising is communication, communication, communication. I know sometimes we all get frustrated and we say, I've already told the franchisee that. My goodness. Sometimes you got to tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them, tell them again. Sometimes that's the case with our kids, our nieces, our nephews. Sometimes that's the case with our coworkers and our team members, right? But a best practice in franchising is communication. So this is even more important during challenging times. So think about what we did at FASTSIGNS. Weekly Connect with Catherine conference calls from the second week in March all the way through the end of July. Then we went to an every other week cadence, and then in September an every 3-week cadence. We are communicating, communicating, communicating. We also set up a website just for the pandemic called prepared.fastssigns.com. You can only get there if you're on your @fastssigns.com G Suite account, so it's secure for anybody outside of FastSigns. But we immediately stood up the prepared.fastssigns.com website. In it, we had all kinds of tools, training, videos, education, if you will, recipes for how to make new products and services that would be needed during the pandemic. But having that site, constantly posting to it, constantly referring to it, was part of communication. We also quickly set up an email address called covidsuccess@fastsigns.com. And we asked our franchisees, every time you have a success, every time you have an idea, send it in. And then we would take those success stories and communicate them in the next week's Connect with Catherine. So we had this beautiful flywheel that we were communicating, we were solving problems, we were coming up with ideas, we were coming up with new products and services. Franchisees were having success selling them. They would send the information in. We would share the success stories that would motivate other franchisees to go out and step outside of their comfort zone. So we had this wonderful flywheel that was reinforcing itself, that was working so successfully. Another thing that we did and started the second week of March is me being in the studio and creating weekly motivational videos. And I will give you a link to that in a bit, that you can go look at any of those videos anytime. We are posting them publicly because I want to pay it forward. This isn't about just FASTSIGNS, it's about helping all of franchising. About 4 weeks into the pandemic, the International Franchise Association saw that I was doing weekly videos. I started sending them to the IFA, and they were actually posting them in the membership site so that they could inspire other franchisors and their franchisees. They asked me to start doing weekly videos for them as well. So I have done 35 weeks of videos for FASTSIGNS and about 31 weeks of weekly videos for the International Franchise Association. Now I'm also doing weekly videos for our Nerds to Go franchisees. So part of that communication is, how do you run your business better? What are the products and services? But also, how do we feed our minds? How do we focus on perseverance and getting through this very, very tough time? So if you think communicate's important on a regular good day, now it's 10 times as important. Very, very important. I also think that each and every one of us can build our own personal strength. And as we do that, we can teach others to build their personal strength. I've been working very hard to teach our franchisees at FASTSIGNS and now Nerds to Go, how do you build your personal strength? And I think that there are several characteristics, but I'm going to talk about 6 of them today. One is courage. Another is perseverance, becoming relentless, developing fortitude, developing personal grit, and taking action. All of those things, I think, make us personally very, very strong, both in our careers, but even more important as family members, as leaders in our family and with our friends. We have a very important role that we can play. So Nelson Mandela said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not the one that does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. And so it is all right for me as a CEO to be afraid, but I need to step out in action and conquer that fear and move through it in order to be a good leader. And part of how you do that is faking it till you make it. I act brave in front of my franchisees and my team, and then I start feeling brave. I am afraid, but I act courageous, and I start to feel courageous. Courage conquers all things. It even gives strength to the body. That was written by Ovid, a Greek philosopher, many centuries ago. And what I found interesting is during that first 3 or 4 months of the pandemic, this was true. For me personally, if I stepped out in courage, I was working 7 days a week, 12, 15 hours a day, and didn't get tired. So this is real truth. When you get past your fear and step out in courage, you will find strength of mind and strength in your body that you never imagined possible. Scared is what you're feeling. Brave is what you're doing. And so we want to step out in braveness constantly, and that will be an inspiration to our family members. It'll be an inspiration to our teams. Perseverance, it is a skill to be developed. Very, very important. And it all starts with what Confucius said: the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. And that's what we need to do. It's that little bit of work, little bit of work, day in and day out. I love this quote by Newt Gingrich: perseverance is the hard work you do after you get tired of doing the hard work you already did. And that's what we all need to do for ourselves, for our families, and for our franchisees, is keep doing that hard work. Another quote on perseverance is, perseverance is the secret of all triumphs. Triumphing through a pandemic, triumphing through any kind of a challenge is that perseverance. Next skill that we can develop is becoming relentless. And I'm going to share with you 3 quotes by Tim Grover. And Tim Grover has an amazing book out. I suggest everybody buy it and read it. Tim Grover is a trainer who works with some of the greatest athletes, whether we're talking about Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. Tim Grover is not a trainer in the physical sense. He is a trainer in the mental sense. He teaches people how to be relentless in their mindset, pushing themselves beyond their physical or their mental limits. And so the first quote I'm going to share with you is, being relentless means demanding more of yourself than anyone else could ever demand of you, knowing that every time you stop, you can still do more. Kobe Bryant credits much of his success at being one of the best basketball players in the history, because he kept pushing himself more to physical pain, and he knew if he stopped, he still could have done more. And that is part of what made Kobe so great. Another Tim Grover quote, everything gets easier when you stop expecting it to be easy. I just love that. And mental toughness is believing without a doubt, whatever happens, you got this. And so reading books like Tim Grover's book on becoming relentless and how to push yourself will help you become a better leader. We also can develop our fortitude. And Louis Nizer said, I know of no higher fortitude than stubbornness in the face of overwhelming odds. It's that continuing to work and work and work and work and not giving up. Antonia Novello was the first female U.S. postal general. So very high position in the U.S. government. The first female, this is in the 1960s. She broke the glass ceiling. And when she talks about fortitude, she says, I know of no higher fortitude than, I believe fortitude is key. More than anything, to be consistent. Go at it, go at it, go at it. And so she felt her success in climbing that ladder to the top position in the U.S. Postal Service in the United States of America was because she went at it, and she didn't give up. Oprah Winfrey. I try to view the challenges in my life not as annoyances, but as confirmations of fortitude. Very important. And then another skill that we can all develop is grit. Angela Lee Duckworth has an amazing TED Talk on grit. You ought to Google TED Talk Angela Lee Duckworth or TED Talk on grit, and it is worth watching 10 very valuable minutes. But Angela Duckworth says grit is sticking to your future day in, day out, and not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years. And, it comes down to what is grit? Grit is refusing to give up. It's persistence. It's making your own luck. And as you develop these skills of personal strength and grit in your own life, you'll be able to inspire your children, inspire your friends, inspire your team members. Grit. The difference in winning and in losing is most often in not quitting. Very important. And Walt Disney built an amazing, if you will, empire because he had dreams and he never gave up. And then the last of the 6 personal strengths I believe we can deliver is that ability to take action, to continue to push forward and push forward and push forward. I'm a big believer that a day of worry is more exhausting than a day of work. And what we need to do is motivate ourselves to take action. And because we learn those skills, we can motivate more franchisees to take action. Winston Churchill has so many great quotes, but one that I love is, I never worry about action, but only about inaction. And then lastly, I'm going to share with you on taking action, another one from Angela Duckworth that is about grit. And that is, as much as talent counts, effort counts twice or twice as much. So you might have been born with a high IQ, great intelligence, but you can be less successful than someone with less intelligence, but works harder and puts more effort into it day in and day out. And we can all grow those skills. So we have on my YouTube channel, But there are 26 motivational videos posted on this, and we're adding more as every week goes on. All of these work for anybody. I'm talking about things like developing perseverance and how to develop a attitude of gratitude and how to force yourself to focus on what you can control and to stop worrying. So 26 different videos that you can use. And as you continue to go back there will be more and more videos, usually 5 to 8 minutes long, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. But it is all about how do we build those characteristics in ourselves so we can be better leaders, whether it's leading ourselves, leading our family, leading our team, or leading an entire brand. That is what it is all about. And it comes down to, again, this belief that I have that there are 5 common characteristics in all shared by all highly successful people, that they are all learned skills, and that we can get better little by little each and every day in each of these 5 areas. We can develop that positive mental attitude. We can learn how to develop and implement goal-directed behavior. We can develop our self-motivation. We can develop our sense of urgency, and we can continue to never stop learning. In whether it's, if we're in the restaurant business, it's about restaurants, it's about production, it's about efficiency, it's about leadership, it's about franchising, it's about emotional intelligence, all of the things. We can get better and better and continue to learn in all these areas, which will allow us to motivate our franchisees to take action. And so in closing, I want to say the dream is free, the hustle, it is sold separately. And so for each of us to have our best careers, our best lives, we can have the dream is free, but the hustle, it is sold very, very separately. And that is sold by our hard work and our dedication. So I want to say thank you very much for your time. It was truly an honor to be invited by the Canadian Franchise Association to just share some thoughts with you today on how to lead through challenging times. I hope you got a nugget or 2 out of this. I know that we can all get better and we can all be more successful in motivating our franchisees to implement what they implement. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening. For more franchising resources, including how-to articles, expert advice, franchisee success stories, and franchise opportunities, visit franchisecanada.online. You can also learn more about franchising at cfa.ca and can connect with specific franchise opportunities at lookforafranchise.ca.